Welcome to this video demonstrating how to navigate around OpenClinica and how to successfully complete data entry for the Arctic trial. First, a quick explanation of what OpenClinica is, as well as an introduction to some key terminology. OpenClinica is an open-source clinical trials application for electronic data capture and data management, which is accessed via a web browser. Currently, the supported web browsers are Chrome, Firefox and Internet Explorer. Before we log into OpenClinica, I will explain some key terminology used throughout the application. First, study. This refers to the trial, in this case Arctic. Subject. This is a participant within the study. Event or study event. This refers to a data collection point such as randomization, entry or outcome data. This will become more apparent once we open the application. CRF. This stands for Case Report Form and is a form used to collect and contain data for a study event. And finally, Discrepancy Notes. These are queries or annotations for data items where a value that has been entered is not as expected. Now let's look at the OpenClinica application. The URL for our test OpenClinica site, which we use for the training exercises, is in your training pack, as are your login details for the training exercises. Once you've successfully logged in, you'll be taken to your home page. At the top, you'll see the name of the study, in this case Arctic, and the centre name, in this case Centre 1. To the right, you'll see your account name, your role within OpenClinica, and the logout button for when you've finished your data entry session and want to log out of the application. Underneath that we have the navigation bar. First we have the home button. Wherever you are in OpenClinica, clicking this button will bring you back to the home page for the current study or site. Depending on your role within OpenClinica, your home page will be different. In the case of the data entry person or clinical research coordinator roles, your home page displays the subject matrix. Next, we have the subject matrix button. The subject matrix is a table with event information for all subjects recruited at the site. This is where you can view, enter and edit data for subjects and their events in the study. Each row represents a subject. The first column contains the study subject ID, also known as the study number. All of the subsequent columns contain the study events for data collection points in the study. As you can see here, the study events are randomization, entry, outcome data, unsuccessful categorization, PCVC removal, microbiology, discontinuation, withdrawal, end of study, and foreseeable. The next button on the navigation bar is the Add Subject button. You will not need to use this button because the subjects are added automatically via the Arctic randomization website as shown in the previous training video. Similarly, above the subject matrix table is Add New Subject. As with the Add Subject button in the navigation bar, you must not click on this and add a subject manually. All subjects must be added to OpenClinica via the Arctic randomization website. The next button on the navigation bar is Notes and Discrepancies. This displays a table listing all discrepancy notes for this centre's subjects, which is used to track and manage any data issues. We will cover notes and discrepancies in more detail in the next training video. For now, we are going to concentrate on the subject matrix. At the moment, this centre only has two recruits, 10026 and 10031, so it's very easy to manage. But as the study progresses, we'll have more and more subjects and they will be displayed across multiple pages. You can see at the top of the subject matrix is a drop-down list, which changes the number of subjects displayed on the page. This always defaults to 15, but you can change it to 25 or 50. To the left of this are navigation buttons. At the moment they are greyed out because we only have one page with two subjects. But once there are more than 15 subjects in the study, these buttons will turn green and you'll be able to use them to skip to the next page, the last page, and also to go back. Once you have a lot of subjects in your study, it can become hard to locate the study number of a particular subject, so you can also search for a study number by typing it into the grey box under Study Subject ID and either pressing Enter on your keyboard or clicking Apply Filter in the Actions column. This then displays the subject you were looking for, so you don't have to go searching through all the pages in the subject matrix. Remember to click Clear Filter once you are done, and you'll once again see all the subjects in the subject matrix. You'll notice the different icons displayed in the study events. These represent the different statuses for data entry in an event. There is a key on the left-hand side of the page for reference, but I will quickly explain the most common statuses and what they mean. Firstly, the green completed icon with the white tick indicates data entry has been completed. For the randomization event, the data is automatically transferred from the randomization website when a recruit is successfully randomized into the trial. Secondly, we have the dark blue scheduled icon. This indicates the event has been scheduled and is ready for data entry. We automatically schedule some events when a subject is added because we are expecting data to be collected for these events for every subject. So for Arctic, we will expect data for the entry and end of study events. Events we don't anticipate being entered for every subject by the site will display the light blue icon. This means that the event has not yet been scheduled and must be scheduled manually by the user before entering the data. For Arctic, this status applies to the outcome data, unsuccessful catheterization, and any follow-up events. Finally, the orange icon with the white pencil indicates data entry has started but has yet to be marked as complete. So now that I've briefly explained the different data entry statuses, I'll demonstrate how to start and complete data entry for scheduled and non-scheduled study events. To start data entry for a scheduled event, click the dark blue scheduled icon and then click View Enter Data in the yellow pop-up. This takes you to the study event screen for the selected subject. In this case, the entry form for subject 10026. To get started, click Enter Data button in the Actions column. This will open the CRF. CRFs are divided into multiple sections. You can see the title of the section in the grey bar above the Save and Exit buttons. To view the number of sections within a CRF, click the drop-down list next to the tabs above the title. In the Arctic entry form, you can see we have 4 sections: Section AB, Section C, Section DE, and Notes. So now let's start entering data for Section A, Eligibility, and Section B, Randomization. This section is designed to mimic the randomization website as much as possible and asks the user to confirm the data entered at randomization. The questions on this section can be split into 3 categories. The first type of question is one that requires a date as a response, such as A1 and A2. These can be answered in one of 2 ways. You can either type the date in the box, making sure to follow the format into the right of the question. Day should be numeric, followed by a hyphen, then the first 3 letters of the month with the first capitalized, then another hyphen, succeeded by the full numeric year. Alternatively, you can click on the date widget next to the text box and select the date directly from there. You can cycle through the months using the single arrow navigation buttons at the top, or you can jump through the years using the double arrow navigation buttons. Next, there are questions which are answered via options in a drop-down menu. Simply click the box next to the question to see the list of possible responses. In the case of question A3, was the infant one of a multiple pregnancy? The options are yes, no, or unknown. Question A3.1 is a follow-on question from question A3 and should only be answered if A3 is answered yes. It states, if yes, has a sibling already been enrolled in this study? Again, this can be answered yes, no, or unknown. Which leads us on to question A3.1.1, which is a follow-on question from question A3.1. This should only be answered if question A3.1 is answered yes. It states, if yes, please enter one of their study numbers. Now this is the third type of category, a free text box for user input, so this is where I'd enter the sibling study number. Of course, if this is not a multiple birth and I had answered question A3 as no, then I would leave A3.1 blank and because A3.1 is blank, I would also leave question A3.1.1 blank. And I would simply move straight on to question A4. So now I'm going to go ahead and answer the rest of these questions. And that brings us on to section B, randomisation, which asks us about the treatment packs we use for this participant. Now, when the infant was randomised to the Arctic trial, they were allocated a pack number, and within that pack were 2 bottles of antiseptic. Both bottles were labelled with the same pack ID number. All going well, one bottle will be used for the successful catheter insertion and the other will be kept safe and used during catheter removal at a later date. This initial pack ID is what would be entered into question B2, treatment pack ID. Now let's imagine that catheter insertion is not successful and there are in fact a number of unsuccessful attempts. You may be in a situation where all of the antiseptic in the first bottle, the first treatment pack, is used up. You'd then continue to attempt successful catheter insertion using the second bottle of antiseptic. Again, after several failed attempts, if you've used up all the antiseptic in the second bottle, you would need to allocate another treatment pack to this infant via the randomisation website. This second treatment pack ID, which also contains 2 bottles of antiseptic, is then what you would put into question B2.1. So that field is for the second treatment pack ID if one is allocated. It is not for the second bottle of the first treatment pack. So basically, these treatment pack IDs would never have the same number. In fact, if you do enter the same number into any of these fields, you'll get a validation error, but we'll talk more about that shortly. As you can see, I've now filled in all of the questions to this section. Once you're happy with your answers to a particular section, press Save. If there are no problems with the data entered, i.e. all expected questions have been completed with valid answers, then you'll be taken to the next section. In this case, section C, Neonatal Details. Now on this section you'll notice some new question types, such as this checkbox, temperature not recorded, for question C8, what was the first recorded temperature on admission to the neonatal unit after birth, and you can see that clicking it puts a tick in the box. And we also have a table underneath question C11. The text above the table says, if yes, please give details of surgical procedure. So you should only be filling in details of any surgical procedures if C11 was answered yes. In the event that C11 is yes and the baby had more than one surgical procedure before randomisation, simply click on the Add button beneath the table to add another row. If you add one too many rows, just click the X button to the right of the row to delete it. Also in this section is a free text field for question C2, what was the infant's time of birth. Times must be entered manually and the format is 2 hour digits using 24-hour time, followed by a full stop, followed by the 2-minute digits as indicated to the right of the question. You may be wondering what the little blue flags are next to each question. These are actually linked to discrepancy notes, but I'll explain more about that later. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly complete the rest of the questions on this section. Again, once all the data has been added and you are happy, click Save. You can see this time I've answered some questions that have failed validation. Any questions that have failed validation will display a red exclamation mark next to them after clicking Save, and at the top of the page in red text will be a validation message explaining why this question has failed. In this example, I have failed to enter an answer for question C5. The validation message reads, please enter a value for, were the membranes ruptured before labour? I've also failed to give an answer for C7. I have given a value for the baby's birth weight that is out of the expected range, and the validation message tells me what that range is expected to be. What was this infant's birth weight is expected to be between 300 and 3,000 grams. And there are 2 validation messages for question C8. I have given a temperature for this question, as well as ticking the temperature not recorded checkbox, which obviously doesn't make sense. And I've also given a temperature that is out of the expected range. So now I've got the opportunity to change those values if they are incorrect. In the case of C3, what was the infant's birth weight, I meant to put 3000, so I'll go ahead and change that. I'll also deselect temperature not recorded because I do have a temperature. In the case of C5 and C7, let's assume I'm unable to locate the answer to these questions at the moment. I can still click Save a second time, and upon doing so, the data will save. Obviously, this data will need to be chased up and amended at a later date, so OpenClinica creates a discrepancy note for any question that has failed validation and was subsequently saved. If I go back to the previous section, you will see the small blue flag has changed to a red flag. If I hover the mouse over that red flag, you'll see that it gives the validation message that was previously displayed at the top of the screen. Again, I'll go into more detail about discrepancy notes and how to resolve them in the next video. So I'll go back to section D and E and keep entering data. You'll notice that rather than starting at D1, the questions start at D4, and D5 is missing altogether. This is because when a trial has both paper and electronic CRFs, we try to mirror the forms as closely as possible with regards to structure, sections and question numbers, but we never put personally identifiable information into OpenClinica, and D1, D2, D3 and D5 of the entry form all ask for that sort of data, which is why they are excluded from the electronic version. Again, you can see I've raised some more validation errors. Ideally, these would be resolved as data is being entered, but as before, you can still click Save and raise discrepancy notes to be resolved at a later time. I'm generating and saving far more discrepancy notes than usual, so I can demonstrate the resolution methods in the next video. The validation rules check a range of things for each question. For example, has the question been answered if it is required? For range values, does the data fall into the expected range? And in the case of the entry form, do the answers given match those provided at randomization? Once you've entered all the data and reached the final tab, you'll see a notes section where you may enter any relevant information not reported in the previous tabs, and most importantly, there is a Mark CRF Complete checkbox. If you tick this box, a pop-up will appear. Click OK if you're happy with the data entered, and then click Save. You'll be taken back to the study event page for the subject, where you'll notice that the status shows the green completed icon, indicating that data entry has been completed for the event. You'll see the username of the person who completed data entry in the initial data entry column and not applicable in the double data entry column because this form is only being single entered. If you click the subject matrix, you'll now see this event as completed. Now we'll look at entering data for an unscheduled event. If I click the blue icon under the PCVC removal event, I can see Schedule where I used to see View Enter Data. Click this and you'll be taken to the Schedule study event for this subject. You then simply need to click the Proceed to Enter Data button and you'll be on this familiar study event page for the subject. Now the event is scheduled, I can continue as before and click the Enter Data icon. You may have noticed this blue circular icon with the white question mark to the right of some of the questions. These are tooltips. If you hover over them, you'll see some further information which will be helpful in answering the question. I'm going to quickly complete data entry on the PCVC removal form, as the method for completing and entering the form is the same as before. However, this time I'm going to stop at section C and exit, because we are going to imagine that I've had to urgently rush away from my desk to perform some duties on the neonatal ward. Once I return and go back to the subject matrix, you can see the icon for the PCVC form is the orange Data Started icon. To continue entering data, click the icon, click View Enter Data and click the Continue Entering Data icon. You can see that all of the saved data is still present on the first two sections, and I can jump to the third section and continue entering as though I'd never been away. I'll continue to enter data into section C. One thing to note, some validation messages do not raise a discrepancy note in the dataset, but instead trigger an email to be sent to a specified email address. They do, however, look just like discrepancy notes in that there is an exclamation mark next to the question and red text appears at the top of the page. These email discrepancy notes all have the same format, which is the name of the form followed by the message which will form the subject of the email. These emails are sent when further action is required by a principal investigator or delegate, and are sent when particular values are given for certain questions, such as question A5.2.1 on the PCVC removal form, and several questions on the outcome data and unsuccessful catheterization forms. This email is sent once the user clicks Save for the second time. On returning to this section, there would be no red flag next to the question because it is not a discrepancy note that needs resolving within the dataset. Now, I don't actually want this email to be triggered as part of this demonstration, so I'm going to change my answer here so that the email won't be sent. But as a data entry user, you need to enter exactly what is on the paper form into OpenClinica, so that where appropriate, emails will be sent to the relevant person informing them of some necessary action that they need to take, such as completing SAE forms or logging protocol deviations in the incident report. Again, once you are happy that all the data has been entered correctly, mark the CRF as complete, click OK on the pop-up window, save the CRF, and then return to the subject matrix. The final thing to mention is that some events are repeating. That is to say, it is possible you will need to enter the same form multiple times for one particular subject. This is the case with the unsuccessful catheterization form, where we expect one of these forms to be completed for each anatomical region to which the antiseptic was applied leading up to an unsuccessful catheterization. For example, you can see here, subject 10031 already has one completed unsuccessful catheterization form, and if we take a quick look at the form, we can see it was for the upper limb on the left. If there was another unsuccessful catheterization attempt on the right upper limb, for example, then we would need to complete another unsuccessful catheterization form for this subject. To do this, from the subject matrix, simply click the unsuccessful catheterization event icon and you'll see a new option, Add Another Occurrence, has appeared. Clicking this will take you to the Schedule Event page again, and upon clicking Proceed to enter data, the user will be able to enter a second unsuccessful catheterization form. I'll now go ahead and very quickly enter the data into this second form. I'm actually going to skip section B in this form just to speed up this demonstration, but as a data entry user, you need to complete and save every section of the form. Once I'm happy with the data, I will mark the CRF as complete, click OK, and then save the CRF. On returning to the subject matrix, you can see there is now a ×2 next to the event, informing you and the coordinating centre that multiple unsuccessful catheterization forms have been completed for this participant. That concludes the OpenClinica navigation and data entry section of the training for the Arctic trial.